Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mayor Rich Hill from the Village of Raleigh Beach. Welcome to our Fireside Chat. Tonight we're lucky enough to have our Lakeville Township Supervisor, Dan Venturi, with us tonight. Dan holds an MS in accounting, a CPA, and a JD from Southern Illinois University. He's licensed in law in both Illinois and Wisconsin. Dan's current occupation is an attorney, as well as Lakeville Township Supervisor. He has resided in Lakeville for over 60 years with his wife, Barbara. They have one daughter, Megan, and one son, Benjamin. Dan has held office for the Lakeville Township Supervisor since 2001 and has remained elected precinct committeeman since 2002. He is very active with the community and county. He serves on the executive committee, member of the Lindenhurst Lake Village Chamber of Commerce, founder and president of Lakeville Township Charities, vice chairman for the Lake County Emergency Telephone System Board, ETSB, community member of the Lakeville Historical Society, and first vice president of the Lakeville Township Lions Club. In the past, Dan has served as the chairman for the Will, Trust, and Probate Committee, as well as the Real Estate Committee for the Lake County Bar Association, and has been chairman for Lake County Township officials. He was a founding board member and treasurer for Lakes Eagles Booster Club, part of the Lakes Community High School, former chairman of the Lake County Republican Central Committee. He was also a board member for Lakes Villa School District 41 from 1997 to 2003. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Mayor Hill. This is a great opportunity for me.
It's always a lot of fun, and I always learn something every time I have a guest on. Can you maybe begin by telling us about Lakeville Township?
I'd love to. As you said, I've been the Township Supervisor for 17 years, since 2001, and I think Lakeville Township has provided me with a lot of experience, and I think we've grown by leaps and bounds. We have basically 4 different functions that we try to cover from the supervisor's perspective. We cover general assistance, emergency assistance, and I can talk a little bit more about those. We have transportation. We provide transportation, which is really kind of an interesting one. We started that in 2004. We bought an old retired Pace bus, and we have a destination-based transportation service. We run to Walmart every Tuesday, and then on Thursdays we either go to Goodwill or Aldi's, and it's been very popular. We also provide other transportation. We provide we have facilities, which is, I think, our key asset. We've grown from 20 acres, which is Caboose Park, the little park on Grand and Fairfield, to now we're about 120 acres.
Wow.
And those are all active recreational. They're not necessarily trails, they're more sports fields, baseball fields, football fields, lacrosse, soccer. And we have about 2,000 kids that that use the fields. So really proud of that. Our recent endeavor was we purchased the old Peacock Camp, which has a lot of history in Lake Villa. It was actually it used to be the Peacock Camp for crippled children, and they had camp that they would hold for disabled children back in the 30s and 40s and 50s. It was great property. It had run down and we acquired it, and we're really happy last year, or 5 years ago actually, we're on our 5th year now, we opened a day camp for grade school kids, kindergarten through 8th grade. And we have an adventure camp. The idea was we didn't want it to be a babysitting camp, we wanted it really to be something fun. And we started with, we worked with the Boy Scouts and used a lot of their curriculum, and so we have, it's got a swimming pool, 600 foot of lakefront, and so we actually had skills. We had kids, we'd teach them to swim, we teach them to fish, we had kayaks, canoes, and then a couple of years ago we partnered with Antioch, Lakes High School, Antioch District, and we put a high ropes course in.
That's fun.
It really is. It's amazing. It's got a 30-foot climbing wall. It has it's got 7 high ropes obstacles, and then we also have about 15 low ropes obstacles. So this year we built that into our curriculum. We have probably six of our counselors are certified in the high ropes. And we started out with, well, maybe we'll just do this year, we'll do this, the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. by the second week, the kindergartners all wanted to go. And it's so funny just watching the expression on their face. They have this look of terror as they're climbing up there. And the whole time they're up there, they have the same look, and they come down and they go, "Can I go again?" I can't wait. I mean, it's really exciting. And as part of it, I've got certified so I could be a counselor too, but I'm not doing it. But I have actually done the course. The scariest part for me on the course is we have what they call a pamper pole. If you just picture a 35-foot telephone pole, and you climb to the top of it, and then you stand on top of it, and then you jump. Now you're all harnessed in, and you don't, but it's a little adrenaline rush. So it's actually kind of a whole new dynamic to the camp. So we're really happy about that. So we're always looking at new exciting things to do, and that's kind of our new one. Which, talking about the camp again, we had this year. The first couple of years, you always have your registration lasts for 2 or 3 months, and you fill it up. This year we went from 70 students last year to 80, and we opened up the registration on a Wednesday in February, and we were having the open house on Saturday. We were fully booked by Saturday.
Wow. Word gets out.
And we actually we added 10 more spots, and we got a good ratio. I mean, we have 23 counselors for the kids, so that's like 3 to 1. Which is a pretty good ratio. And the kids all seem to like it. Our counselors are returning, which is a good sign. We have counselors that have been there for the whole 5 years. We start out with, like junior and senior in high school, and then some of them, at college, they come back in the summer. And, it seems to be a good atmosphere because the counselors are coming back, the kids are coming back. And our goal is when the kids go home, they can, you always ask your kids, what'd you do today? Oh, nothing. They actually can say, this is what I did. I was up on top of a 30-foot climbing wall and went down a zip line. Wow. So we're really excited about that. But I didn't want to take up all of your time.
No, that's fine. It's a very good introduction about the township and how it's changed over the years. Start off with a tough one here. Is it true that township government is the oldest form of government in the United States?
Well, it's interesting. I had been doing some research on the history of Lake Villa Township, and I just happened to look at that. And yeah, in fact, the first township government was like in 1636. Wow. It was in Rhode Island, I think Providence, Rhode Island, which is interesting because it's like 140 years before the Declaration of Independence. So yeah, township governments have been around for a long time. Not so much in Illinois. Illinois, we started, our first township government was like in 1850. The state constitution allowed it as just before that. So that's when Illinois got townships.
And how are the geographic boundaries of townships determined? And what are the boundaries of the Lake Villa Township?
Well, a great question. I guess generally, if you're familiar, the roads, it's generally going to be Grass Lake Road to the north, and then Monteville Road to the south. Although the south line kind of runs from Monteville Road, but then it kind of runs over to Rollins Road. So, but you kind of think of it as Monteville Road, and then Route 45 to the east, and then you got the lakes, Fox Lake and Petite Lake on the west side. But Lake Villa Township boundaries, actually Lake Villa is a relatively young township. It's the youngest one in the county anyways. Oh. We just had our 100th anniversary a few years ago in 2014. It actually was formed in 1914. And the reason that it was formed was, the argument was that residents had to go too far to vote because you had to vote at the township center. So they actually took parts of Avon Township, they took parts of Antioch Township, and a little bit of Grant Township to make the township. And the way that it worked is they had to get a petition signed by 75% of the registered voters in the new district. And it was, I think we have controversy here today. It was funny reading about it because they had like 274 registered voters. So they needed like 230 signatures. And they had them, 230. And they filed those petitioners with the county to form a new township. But then there was another petition withdrawing some of the signatures. So there was a withdrawing petition, and then there was a re-adding petition. So the people that withdrew then added their names back. So you can figure, people were going door to door because there was only 200 people. And so they were going door to door and saying, John, you signed this petition, you need to sign this petition. So ultimately they ended up with like one extra vote, and they formed it. As I said, the township, so at the end of the day, they formed the new township, but it's quite the interesting story of how it got there.
Yeah, it sure is. When you first started talking about creating a new one, I know that they did the whole county at once, pretty much laid out the townships where they are.
Yep.
Now I understand that they took existing townships, part of them off to make a new one. Okay.
Yeah, there was actually two. I think Deerfield and West Deerfield also divided up, but they did that before Lake Villa.
Great. See, I already learned something.
Yeah, well.
What was the purpose for the creation of townships, and what functions did they perform? You kind of told me there was one purpose, to get a closer voting place, but is there any other purpose for the creation of the township, and what kind of functions?
Are you talking relating back to
Yes,
when they originally started? Well, it's interesting because the way township government is set up, it depends on the needs of the community. And you figure back then, there weren't any villages. I guess there were counties, but they were all, you had the county seat was, back in Waukegan. So if you wanted any government services, there was nothing that you could have. And the townships, they have mandated services and then services that they provide, just like a municipality. I mean, if you said it, a municipality is going to provide police protection and zoning. That's what you're required to do, but anything else you do is what the community wants. Townships, in some areas, still to this day, they provide sewer and water. We contract for garbage pickup. We actually do that in Lake Villa Township. They provide, by law, we were required to provide emergency assistance and general assistance, which kind of helps our neighbors when they don't qualify for other assistance programs and they're down and out. So we provide those, but we also provide, I guess, two general categories: are senior services and youth services, which are also provided for specifically in the Act. So provided for the senior services, obviously we provide transportation, we provide community senior events, we provide little things like lending closets. We'll let people, if we collect wheelchairs and walkers and those things, and if somebody needs one, we let them use it, and when they're done with it, they bring it back, usually with a few extra things. So. We do that. And then youth services is kind of our sports fields, and that's kind of where we've gone from 20 acres to 110, is providing services for kids. And those are, some areas, a lot of Avon Township, well, I guess by a large portion of it's all covered by park districts.
Right.
So we kind of fill the gap where there isn't a park district. We do have a portion of the township, the part that's in Round Lake, and then the portion in Lindenhurst does have a park district.
Round Lake Beach.
Round Lake Beach, but actually there's portions around Lake too.
Oh.
So we actually have 7 villages in our township. So we do have Round Lake Beach, and we do have those two. But the areas that don't have park districts, we kind of fill that void. And then we also, I think, to the extent we do things, we do it a little bit different than a park district in that we don't necessarily provide programs. We do provide the camp, and that's kind of unique because generally we don't provide programs. We provide the facilities, and then we partner with not-for-profits. Our football league, our baseball league, lacrosse are all not-for-profit organizations and volunteer-led, and we partner with them. We provide them facilities and other resources, but we don't actually run the program. So it's actually a pretty economical way to provide a lot of those things.
Yeah, as long as you have good quality parents that want to step up and help out, that's a great way to run it. Gets the kids with their parents all together.
It's a lot of work, and a lot of people are pretty passionate about it, and God bless them, they're willing to do it. I think it's a great thing, and it works out very well. I mean, because you really have people that are doing it because they love it or because they want their kid to be a pro baseball player, which I think they all silently want.
And how has the function of township government evolved over the years?
Well, I think as, the municipalities and counties have provided more services, the townships have kind of morphed into providing complementary services because they don't need a lot of the core services that the township actually can provide police protection. We don't do that because we have the county and the municipalities, so we try not to duplicate that. But we do provide facilities because the municipalities don't provide facilities for sports. We provide transportation because the municipalities aren't doing that. The county, we actually partner with the county to some extent on one of our transportation services. But we kind of try to fill the gap for services that will, I think, enhance the community that aren't otherwise being provided. And I think it gives us some flexibility to do those things.
Yeah. And do townships in all parts of the state provide the same types of services, or they vary by region?
I think it varies by township. I mean, if you look at the dramatic differences, you look at Avon Township versus Lake Villa Township. Avon is, you've got the Park District, so it really doesn't fill any role for the Park District. It really, it provides general assistance, emergency assistance, and then it still provides the assessment function and the road commissioner function. But I think, and there's some townships that they don't have any roads at all. And there's one version, it might complicate it, it's called a coterminous township, and the only one we have here is Zion. So Zion's township boundaries are the same for the Zion Township as the village. So unlike most other townships, if Zion annexes in property, it becomes part of the township, as opposed to our township lines are otherwise fixed. But they don't even have in that case, the village board is also the township board. So the township supervisor, actually, they have the township meeting at the same time as they have the village board meeting, but they have a mayor and a supervisor. So that's a confusing one. But generally, the township, like I said, Avon doesn't provide facilities that we do, although we do partner with Avon in our transportation service.
That's right, yes.
We have we have a transportation service that we have with it's actually with Lake Villa Township, Antioch Township, Grant, Avon, and then recently Fremont and Wakanda Township joined us. So we have a partnership with that group, and we also partner with the county, RTA, and PACE. And last year, I think we had 19,000 rides on that transportation service. So, that's a great resource. And that's something where, Avon Township is stepping up and filling a void that's not otherwise being provided. And so I guess it depends on what the needs are. As I said, I know some townships today even still provide the sewer and water services that because they're more rural and it's not otherwise available.
Yeah, you get into Illinois, it changes everything. Up here, we're like village. Down
Yeah.
there, they have village, big open area, village.
Yes.
And why do you think townships have been singled out for elimination? Tell me it's not your fault.
No, it might be my fault, but hopefully it's not. I think I think there is the belief, and I think the legislature and the people that do it have a good motive. I mean, their idea is real estate taxes are out of control.
Yes.
Everybody knows that. Everyone agrees with that. So let's see what we can do. And then you throw out a number and you say, well, there's I think almost 1,500 townships in Illinois. We can get rid of all of them. We're going to save some money. But the fallacy is that if you eliminate the township, their functions still need to be done. If you look at the highway commissioner, we have 58 miles of road.
That's a lot.
We do have a lot of roads. And those are generally the older subdivisions, the narrower roads, the harder ones to maintain, the harder ones to rebuild, dealing with flooding issues and all of these things in the old areas. These are 100-year-old subdivisions in some cases, and we're maintaining those. And our costs per mile to maintain them are a lot less than what the county or the state's paying. I mean, if you look at it just from a snow plowing standpoint, when you leave your house after a snowstorm, where are the best roads, where are the worst ones? You got the township roads, the municipal roads are always the ones that are done first. Then you got the county trucks, which will come around a little bit later, and then hopefully before you get home from work, the state came by. So, I mean, if you look at that, you want to give that up. So you also keep in mind that the highway department, if you eliminate township government, you still have to maintain those roads. And the fallacy is that someone else is going to do it cheaper than townships do it. I don't know that that's true. Same thing for the assessor. We still have to do the assessment of properties. And whether or not it's done locally or whether it's done at the county, you can look at our system as opposed to Cook County. Well, Cook County, the assessment's all done at the county level. If you look at your assessment, now basically your assessment's a third of your property value. So if you have a $100,000 house, your assessment's $33,000. If you look in Lake County, your assessed value and your value are usually pretty close. I mean, you can go in and you can argue it, and sometimes they make mistakes, and usually the local assessor will work with you and say, hey, listen, yeah, you're right, show me your evidence, and then he might show you his, and he may agree or disagree. If you're in Cook County, that's done down in Chicago, and your only option is to file a formal appeal. I mean, there's nobody for you to go talk to change it. And they don't really go out and check the properties all that often. In fact, where we might have an equalization factor, our assessments, the state says the Lake County's gone up 2%. So all the assessments go up 2%. If the assessors do nothing, they just do an equalization factor of 2% and everybody goes up 2%. Okay, so you say, okay, that works. Cook County, if you go there, you might have an equalization factor of 3.5 times the assessment. So that $33,000 house, the assessed value might be $10,000. Okay, great. But then they equalize it and you're right up to $33,000. So now you're fighting that my house is worth more than $10,000.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just a ludicrous system, and there's nobody for you to talk to. So I guess the question is it worth having an assessor that's local? And then I don't know that the Cook County system's any cheaper. So will it save you any money? Will your real estate tax bill go down if there's no assessor? And then, the services that the township itself provides, yeah, you could probably do away with them, but are you a better community because you have those? And so the fallacy is that if you eliminate townships, all of the cost goes away. And right now, if you look at your real estate tax bill, the township portion, I guess it changes by township, is about 3% of your bill. So if you look at it and you say, my real estate tax bill's $10,000, all right? If we eliminate townships, my real estate tax bill is going to be $9,700. And then that's on the fallacy that all of those costs go away. So I think they're a motivation to say they're doing something. I think sometimes, I think their heart's in the right place. They want to do something. Sometimes I think they're just trying to make a political statement for their next election so they can say, I did something, even though it might save you 12 cents on your real estate tax bill. And say, we froze this, but it really doesn't matter.
And some of those things sound so good when you first toss them out there. Oh yeah, eliminate them. Oh look, we'll save all this money. Until you really start digging into the details, and that's where you always find out the issues.
Yeah, and I'm all for. I mean, there's a movement to consolidate, consolidation in government, and I think that movement should be not just townships, should be in governments in general. Mm-hmm. I have no problem with that. But if you want to consolidate, there should at least be a required study that it's going to save you money. So you don't get rid of the government and then find out, well, these services are gone. And now it's going to cost you more. So at least have some documentation that says, yeah, this will save you some money if you eliminate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is the governing structure of a township? I know you're the supervisor. What else is involved in there?
There's the supervisor and the township board. So there's the supervisor and 4 trustees. There's also a township clerk who would, obviously responsible for the records. And then the other 2 elected positions are the assessor and the highway commissioner. Mm-hmm. So I report to the Township Board, and the assessor is independent. I guess we work with him on his budget, and the highway commissioner, we all work together, but they're actually, the highway commissioner and the assessor are independent elected officials.
Okay. I know that when we have local elections here, well, 3 trustees will be up next spring, and then 2 years from now, the other 3 trustees will be up along with the mayor and the clerk. Now, townships are all up at the same time?
They are. It's an archaic system, but all the assessor, the highway commissioner, all of the clerk, all the trustees, and the supervisor are up every 4 years at the same time. So, in fact, you can walk in and have a completely new board with no transition, no background, no experience. In fact, when I was first elected, and it turned out to be a good thing. When I first was elected, I ran alone, and then I ran against a slate that was running with 4 trustees and a supervisor, and I won as supervisor. Knock on wood for me. I think it's wood. But I ended up with the 4 trustees that ran with the other supervisor.
Oh.
So, and none of them had ever been either a trustee or been elected to township office before. So I kind of came in, and it's like, well, luckily the staff was there, and they kind of told me some of the nuts and bolts. And I really, to my advantage, I didn't know what I should and shouldn't do, so I investigated and found out things that we could do that made some sense to do, and I think I made some bold choices, and it worked out okay. But yeah, everyone's elected every 4 years.
Wow.
And that's...
Well, if the state should look at anything to change, perhaps breaking something up there, because that just seems like they have a whole new group come in and there's nobody there, any continuity from what happened. Boy.
I agree with that.
And how are townships funded? Are there property taxes, grants? You pick my pocket? How do you get your money?
We can try and pick your pocket, but we're funded 99% through real estate tax.
Oh.
So all of our funding is that 3% of your real estate tax bill is that. Now we do get grants, and actually I've been very lucky. We've done very well. The first grant I got was an open space grant. We built a football field across the street, Tiny's Park.
Oslet grant?
Yeah, Oslet grant, yeah. And then we also we both got an acquisition grant and a development grant for our soccer fields. So, I mean, some of those grants, were over $1 million worth of grants.
Wow.
So those are great to work with.
Mm-hmm. And by law, Illinois townships are charged with 3 basic functions. You kind of talked about this already. General assistance for the indigent, the assessment of real property for the basis of local taxation, and maintenance of all roads and bridges outside the federal, state, and local jurisdiction. I think you already explained pretty much how they provide those services. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think, again, going back to part of the fallacy of that townships only need to do general assistance, but that isn't what the community wants. They want more services, and we try to provide the services as reasonable as we can. So we do more than the core services, but we're allowed to, like I said, youth services, senior services are kind of the key functions of things we can and do provide, but we're not required by law. So no one's going to arrest me if I don't build a sports field for the 500 football players, but they might lynch me.
And townships, at least in the urban areas, they provide essential social services through a food pantry, senior citizen program. You just started talking about that a bit. What kind of programs do you offer? I know you do have a food pantry, because I donated that recently.
We did, yes, you did. And I thank you very much for that. Yeah, actually, we do have a food pantry, and it's actually, we probably serve about 1,600 people a year now. In 2008, I think it was up to about double that.
Wow.
We've actually, and keep in mind, all the food that's donated is all through donations. We are a member of the Northern Illinois Food Bank, so we do buy food when we run low on things, but we can buy it for like 10 cents on the dollar. We also have a garden where we actually grow fresh produce for our garden. And then we have people that come and donate. It's amazing, we get these big cucumbers and for our food pantry. We give out hundreds of pounds of fresh vegetables every year. But we have a great food pantry, and it's all run by donations, and it's very successful.
It's very helpful. There's people that fall in hard times and need that extra assistance, and hopefully you can keep them moving forward.
Well, it's amazing, you say that, but a lot of people that give us money, even on a regular basis, are people that at one time were using the food pantry.
Right.
So it helped us, and now they're doing better, and they want to give back.
Pay it
and,
forward,
the people
or pay
that
it
do, payroll deductions, and they'll send us, it might be $10 a week. Or $10 a month, I'm sorry, $10 a month. It doesn't have to be a lot, but every little bit helps.
What role does the supervisor play in the creation of the budget, supervising the staff, annual property assessments? What all do you do?
Well, the assessor is in charge of the assessment. That's his function. And the highway commissioner obviously in charge of the roads. We have a staff, we have 23 camp counselors now.
Oh, yes.
My office staff is actually just my administrative assistant, which is one person, and then we actually share a person with the highway commissioner. Jane actually works for Jim and myself. So like 1.5 is my office. Now we do have some facilities personnel. We have 5 We have 5 full-time employees there, and then we bring in a couple summer help. High school, college kids come in for a couple of weeks. It's my role to supervise everybody who doesn't work for the highway commissioner or the assessor. So I'm in charge of all the counselors, obviously the office personnel, and the grounds, the maintenance personnel. As to the budgets, generally I propose the budget, and I meet with the assessor. They give me their recommendations. I talk to the highway commissioner, who gives me his recommendations. This is what we need, and then we propose the budget. Technically, the assessor is part of my township budget. The highway department is totally different. They have a separate levy altogether, and they have their own separate budget. The assessor's office is kind of a sub-part of my budget. So then, and our board has to approve both the budgets. I guess technically they don't have to approve the highway commissioner's budget. We've always approved it.
I know municipalities are required to have a balanced budget when we pass it. Is it the same thing for townships?
Yeah, in fact, we've always had a balanced budget every year. We've been very frugal, and basically what we do is we take a portion of our budget and we build up a reserve for larger projects. So we do, when we bought Peacock Camp, we got a really good deal on it. It was like $650,000 for 26 acres with the building and the pool and the lake. But it needed a lot of work, and we had staff that could do that. So it was a good deal, but we had the money saved up. So we saved basically about $100,000 a year that we put into a reserve fund, so it builds up, so when an opportunity comes up, we could take advantage of it. So we've always had a balanced budget, and I guess we've never had a look at even doing tax warrants and things like that. So we haven't. We have zero debt, and so yes, we do have a balanced budget.
Well, since you have a balanced budget and I have a balanced budget, maybe we can convince the state to stick with their balanced budget. What do you think?
There were only, $100 billion?
Yeah, that's probably double that, but.
Well, and you say that, and I want to go back to the tax issue, if you don't mind. You're talking about that. If you look at it, if the biggest portion of your real estate tax bill are your schools.
Yes.
70% in most cases, sometimes higher. So eliminating the small pieces really aren't going to take a bite out of it. But if you look at it, the state needs to fund what they're supposed to fund. If the Constitution says they're going to be the principal, they have the principal responsibility for funding schools, which I think people assume is 50% or more. They fund less than 30%, and we out in Lake County get shortchanged. I think in Antioch's district, they fund like 7%. So if you figure if the state would just fund the 50% they're supposed to fund, your real estate tax bills would almost be cut in half. that would be something significant.
Sure would.
So, just saying, that might be somewhere to look.
I'm glad you brought that up. And is it true that the assessor is the only elected office that needs to have some type of certification?
They do actually have to, you have to file it with your nominating petition that you're a certified assessor. And you have a certain amount of training that's required. But yeah, as far as I know, it's the only elected official that requires that.
And or even a coroner, doesn't have to be a doctor or medical at all?
No, and
or
in
administration.
Fact, yeah, or even an undertaker.
Yeah, right. Locally, there seems to be an initiative to have an elected county assessor rather than appointed. What's the benefit of an appointed assessor or the benefits of an elected assessor? Where do you see this falling?
I think it depends on whether you look at the county assessor or whether it's a ministerial act, whether his role is to collect the assessment data from the township assessors and coordinate it and just process it. Then it's more of a ministerial act where he's not using his opinion, he's not changing things. And now recently I think there's been some thought that if, in fact, the county assessor is rendering his opinions on whether the properties are assessed right. And that seems to be, part of the discussion going on. So if in fact he's rendering his opinion, then he probably should be accountable to the voters. If he's doing a ministerial act of just accumulating the information, organizing the hearings, and not rendering an opinion, then maybe he should just be an appointed. So I guess the balance is, what is the county's assessor's job? Is it to render opinions? Then he probably should be elected. If it is that he's just coordinating all the township assessors, then he probably should be appointed.
Interesting.
And it's, and where the answer is, I don't know, but I think that's where the argument lies.
Yeah, I've always viewed their role as more administrative than actually making decisions, because you have a set procedures you follow and you're not creating new ones. It's not that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
but,
that's exactly what an appointed position should be.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. How does the township interact with other forms of local government? How do villages interact with the townships?
Well, it's interesting.
I know that answer to that one, by the way.
Well, we talked about the things that we've done in Lakeville Township, and there isn't anything that I've done that wasn't a partnership with somebody else. Mm-hmm. We talked about going back to the Tiny's Park, where I had gotten the OSLID grant, but that was actually a partnership with the Forest Preserve. The Forest Preserve was buying a large chunk of land across the street. A lot of it was wetlands and stuff that they liked. And they had 10 acres that was the farm field, which they didn't like that much. And I said, well, I like that. So the partnership is we bought that property together. We talked about the Peacock Camp and the high ropes. That's been a partnership with the high school. We have a partnership now, actually, we're doing our summer concert series. It's every Wednesday night, it's a free concert, and we have regional bands come in. And they play some at Caboose Park at the Township, they play at Bleeman Mansion in Lake Villa, and then the Lindenhurst Park District. But that is all funded as a partnership between Lake Villa Township, Village of Lindenhurst, Lindenhurst Park District, and the Village of Lake Villa, and the Chamber of Commerce is involved in it as well. And that's a great partnership, and we provide free concerts. It's been very well received. Mm-hmm. We also have another good example of a partnership is we have the Joint Township Center, which is actually where Antioch Township has their office. That was a partnership back from 2001 when they built the Lakes High School. They actually Antioch Township needed a new home. Lake Villa Township needed more ball fields, so they actually had 5 acres that we used for some baseball fields, and Antioch High School is looking for an administrative office. So we actually partnered together and were able to get some grants from then State Representative Tim Osmond to build the Joint Township Center and the baseball fields. And then we manage it jointly, and it's worked out really well. So I'm a big proponent of working together with other governments and not duplicating efforts. I mean, we share equipment, we do all kinds of things to work smarter and not harder. And the Village of Lake Villa buys a bucket truck, so when we need to change a light bulb on a telephone pole, we don't go buy another bucket truck, we use theirs. They need to spray for mosquitoes, we have a mosquito sprayer, we go and spray mosquitoes for them. I mean, so we try to complement each other as much as possible.
And that's great to hear. That's we're trying to do that more and more in our whole area. Even the large issues like Jawa for the fresh Lake Michigan water. There was a joint effort between many villages. We have CENTCOM, dispatch, fire, police, and other things like that. And there's so much more we can do that I know we're beginning to investigate even more.
And I think the attitudes changed where, a few years ago, it was like villages were competing against each other instead of working together. And I don't see that competition anymore. I think everyone has realized that they're better working together than, saying, well, our village is better than their village.
I know back when the recession hit back in 2008, we had, I think, about a little over 100 full-time employee equivalents. And now we're down to probably 75, 78, somewhere through there. And we had to make some rapid changes. Some of those things were planned long-term, but we made some quick changes because we had to. The budget dropped. Did it impact the township? Was that something similar, and have you fully recovered from that yet?
From the township perspective, we were okay. As I said, we always ran pretty lean. I mean, obviously during that time we've frozen our levy actually every year except for one since 2008. I mean, we've done that. We had our reserve fund that we were building up, and we just weren't able to build that up during that time. But I'll tell you, the bigger recovery that I'm glad about is the residents have recovered. We started in 2009 doing a job fair where we invited employers throughout the county to come, and there was a free job fair for them. And the first year we had maybe 20 employers come, and those were regional employers, that came, and we had 1,500 people in line to see those few employers. And turn it around, we stopped doing them now because the last job fair, I had like 35 employers that wanted to come that we couldn't even fit in, and we had like 50 people looking for jobs. So I had more employers than people. So, I mean, I think that's a great thing. It's a great problem to have. So I think, more importantly, I think the economy of our residents has turned around. Our food pantry. Like I said, we usually have about 1,600 people a year coming through there. Back then it was like 3,200. So, I mean, again, It's kind of back down. It used to be, actually before 2008, I think we probably used to be about 800-900 a year. So it's still up a little bit higher, but I think a lot of that might be more awareness that the food pantry exists. So, I think the economy is doing a lot better.
That's good for all of our residents, definitely. And are there any recent trends impacting townships?
Well, I think as I said, I think we try to be fluid and we change with what the community demands. I don't know that there's any specific change. For us, like I said earlier, our summer camp has been a lot of fun and very well received. So we kind of just looking at things that the community wants, and we try to fill those needs.
In your bio here, you mentioned that you are on the Lake County Emergency Telephone System Board for the ETSB for Lake County. As I'm sure you're very much aware of, where you've been meeting throughout the county, trying to work on a long-term 911 communication center for the whole county, either 1 or 2 or 4, whatever it might come down to. Have you been actively participating in that at all, at the board?
I have. Our board actually, the Lake County ETSB is probably the largest ETSB in the county. Well, clearly is. Yes. But it makes sense. I mean, the cost of operating a call center is tremendous. $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 to $1 million a year, depending on the call center. And to the extent you can consolidate them, obviously it's much more efficient. The argument against the consolidation is, I live in this town and I want my call center in this town so they know where Oak Street is. Technology is such that it's all GPS anyways. You put in an address, well, when they call, you're getting the GPS location automatically. So, I mean, there's a lot of those services that, they're even out of state. I don't know that I'm ready to buy into that one, but I don't see a big problem with, having somebody, in Libertyville dispatching for Lake Villa. I think can save a lot of money for doing it. The problem, and I think a lot of the municipalities have, or some of the municipalities have call centers, and they don't want to let them go. And I think the residents are giving them pressure, saying, "No, I want my call center in my village." And I think they're getting a lot of political pressure. And it's costing some of these villages $500,000 a year that, might, if they had a regional call center, might only cost them half of that. So.
Well, back in the early 90s, we opened up CENTCOM over in Round Lake Beach with the Round Lake area and Haynesville as partners. Since that point, Barrington's joined, and we have Antioch that joined, and they're quite remote from our communities. And you talk to people up there, and a lot of them have no idea that they're calling all the way to Round Lake Beach.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's an educational process. Like you said, the residents think that that's going to happen, it's going to help them. Once they fully understand, they can save money and get the same, if not better, service, because when you have a bigger consolidated section, you can, like we're doing medical dispatching right now, emergency medical dispatch, we're doing a text to 911, so many things that a single station probably can't do. So it's great. Glad you're on there and you're pushing forward.
If you have a tragedy, I mean, in Round Lake Beach, something tragic happens, and you probably need some outside help, and even the call center, from that perspective. I mean, there's obviously redundancy, and it would go to a different call center, but it's probably better to have more of a regional approach than a local approach. I think CENTCOM does a great job, and probably the model that countywide.
That's what we think, yeah.
Yeah, well, I know, and I've been on both sides of that argument.
Dan, is there anything else you'd like to mention that we haven't covered?
Well, I think the key for good government is everyone needs to work together. I think, we're preaching to the choir here, but, we got to realize we're spending other people's money.
Right.
And two things are always, is it something that the community wants, and is it a good value for the community? And I mean, those have kind of been my guiding principles. It generally has worked out pretty well. I think you have similar philosophies, and, I'm thankful for the opportunity to be here today, and more importantly, to be the Township Supervisor.
Well, I'd like to continue doing what you're doing there. You guys have a good programs, and I heard a lot of good things from the residents out that way. And actually, I live in Lakeville Township myself, so.
We're back live. There's been a couple of questions, although we're echoing a little bit. The question was asked on what I saw as the future of consolidating townships, and what would be the factors for doing that. And I think the idea of consolidating townships makes a lot of sense, especially when you have communities that kind of have similar backgrounds and similar I guess not backgrounds, but philosophies and similar needs. You can obviously provide it more efficiently, and the more people. And I've always kind of looked at everything that we do in Lakeville Township as part of the community, whether or not you live in Lakeville Township or Avon Township or Antioch Township. It's all part of the same community. I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of join efforts and consolidate. Whether or not it's necessarily any cheaper, I don't know, but obviously you're serving a broader base, and I think that would be a good thing.
I would agree. That's something definitely to investigate, if nothing else.
Yeah, I'd love to investigate. And I think a lot of townships are gun shy, because as soon as you say consolidation, they think the next step's elimination. And I'm very comfortable with defending what our township does and what we do for the taxpayers for the money that we get. So I'm not trying, I'm happy to discuss with anybody the benefits that we provide and how we can provide it on a broader base.
Any other questions tonight?
Let me repeat the question. The question is, a lot of this working together requires communication on a regular basis. And I think that's a great question, because you're absolutely right. Because if you go and you talk to somebody only when you need something, it's a hard communication to have. But if you have an open communication dialogue going back and forth on a regular basis, it's a lot easier to say, what do you think about this? Not, I need this, or, it's kind of like a general idea. And then if things come up, you kind of have an idea of what that government or that person or that mayor will think. and it's easier to move forward with ideas. Do we have regular communication? Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we use, from the township perspective, because we share a lot of resources on township, we have monthly luncheons that we meet once a month. All of the township supervisors are invited. And it's a great resource. We don't have an agenda, we just meet and talk, and we talk about problems we have, and other people talk about solutions, and we work together on that. Similarly, there's groups that several mayors and now county board members. Donnie Schmidt from Fox Lake has started with him, and the mayor of Lake Villa used to go out to lunch, and then the group just keeps growing. I got included a couple months ago, but it's a great group, and I think I don't know that there's a mayor or an elected official that doesn't have my cell phone number, and I don't think there's anybody in the community that doesn't have the mayor's cell phone number, to his dismay sometimes. But communication is key. I do a broadcast email that I send out, a couple times a week. So communication not only with other elected officials, but with the community itself. I do a robocall, which is generally for community events, so the community knows what's going on. Most recently, I do them for the summer concert series, and I tell people, what the concert is this week and who's going to be there. I try not to abuse it. I only do it. I used to do just one a month. I do more in the summer because for the summer concert series, but I try not to do too many of them. And I've gotten a real positive response for it. But I think it's a great question, and you're absolutely right. Communication's key, no matter what. I mean, to the constituents and then with the other elected officials.
Another question?
A great question. The question is, how do I find out what the community is looking for? And I think the best way to do that is be part of the community and listen to people. I mean, part of the communication isn't just telling people, it's also listening. When I'll give you an example of when we decided we needed a football field. When I came in, we had Caboose Park, 120-acre park, and we had, at that time, about 500 kids in the football program. They had one field, and it was their practice field that they used 4 nights a week. And it was their game field on Sunday, too. So if any time between August and November, when the program ended, it rained, it was a muddy field, and it never grew back. It was a mud field for the rest of the year. And their practices, they would have, all the kids were practicing on, you get 10, your team gets 10 yards, your team gets 10 yards, and that was it. So that was a pretty easy one for me to say, they need a new football field. Similarly with baseball, there were over 1,000 kids at one time in the Lakeville Baseball League, and they just didn't have enough baseball fields. So we kind of look for what the demand is, and then we also then step back and go, is it something that we can do and do well? If it's something we don't think we can do well, then we shouldn't do it. You keep your ear to the ground and talk to people and look at what the options are. If there's someone else doing it and doing it better, let's work with them and help them. In my philosophy, it isn't who gets the credit; it's let's just get it done. So a lot of the communication is the communication both ways, listening to what needs to be done.
And talk about communication, one thing we didn't mention is you guys have a great website also with lots of information out there.
We do. We try to keep as much information as we can open to the public. And
thanks again, Dan. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. My next Fireside Chat is going to be on Wednesday, August 29th at 6 p.m. We actually start at 6:30 with the actual program. And I'm going to have the Mexican Consulate General here. Again, thanks, Dan, for sharing your knowledge with myself and with our residents. And I always try to share one of our village pins with any of my guests.
All right.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Good night, everyone.